stories turn songs into symphonies, events into memories, and lives into legends. In our crowded world, knowing your story cuts through the noise so you can make your mark, whether you want to sell more books, increase profits, or just make a difference. At Sterling & Stone, story is our business. The Story Studio podcast is where we explore ways we can all tell our stories better. And now, with the Story Studio podcast number 17, here's Johnny, Sean, and Dave.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Story Studio podcast. Today we're going to do episode 4 in our arc on foundations and starting right for Sterling & Stone. And today we're going to talk about planning for the long haul or building for the long haul. This is something that we've always done. As a matter of fact, we've almost to a fault. Like there have been plenty of times that we've stepped over things that could have probably advanced the business more, like money that could have advanced the business, opportunities that could have advanced the business.
Remember when we used to say we're not a revenue-driven company?
That was intelligent.
That was awesome.
Do you want to make another appointment with our accountant and tell him that that's our plan? We're not a revenue-driven company.
I think he's heard it enough.
How about if I tell my wife?
We could just become a religion, and that'll take care of everything.
Right, because then it's not profit; it's donations. Yeah. So, but we've actually shot ourselves in the foot many times because we were such long-term thinkers that sometimes it's to absurdity. But finding that balance and making the smart decisions without hurting ourselves in the short term has been kind of a big deal. There's a lot of like Kindle Gold Rush sort of mentality, and we never bought into that. Even now, like there's still a lot of that. People are trying to game the system or whatever. It's ultimately if you screw your readers over. I mean, not to make this just about story, because it's not just about story; it's about the company as well. But that's what we're going to talk about: planning for the long haul. So do you want to talk about maybe the scope of the team? Because I actually don't know how to begin this discussion, because maybe this is where we begin the discussion. Because when I first drew, I got this idea in my mind that I was going to draw the org chart, the organization chart for Sterling & Stone 2 years ago. I don't know, a year and a half. And
well,
so
what was the first version of the org chart? The very, very first version, because actually it makes sense. This whole divergent line that we've had in my head, the first time you did an org chart was right after we flew to Chicago to meet Danny, which was like a week after the first Smart
when I
Artist
started
Summit.
thinking about it, it was right before that, because I showed it to Danny and he kind of laughed at me.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, but it wasn't when we flew to Chicago. It was later. It was when he came to us, I think. Well, whatever, it doesn't matter. But the point is, I did show it to Danny, and I didn't know what that meant. Like I was trying to draw it out functionally, but not like business. And I don't want to go too deep into this because who cares? But there's a sort of a definition of function, like functional units within business, that is a good way to draw an org chart. But I was just like, well, we do this thing, and so because we do this thing, that I'm going to draw that over here, and that didn't really make any sense, and I didn't have people under people that in a way that made sense. But I was just trying to articulate it. I wanted to draw it out. I wanted to understand what the business was. And what's funny is the business got really simple recently. And just as maybe a capper on the first pass of me describing this, and we can go into a little more detail, is that about 3-4 months ago, we decided that Jen's title should be creative director. She was just kind of wherever. Like we originally hired her as a marketing assistant for Christine. She became a story shop tech person, which was kind of in line with what her old job used to be, which, by the way, was not something she was interested in continuing with us. We've had her all over the place, and then it's like, you know what? Jen's our creative director. And that seemed to land right. But I was looking and I'm like, well, so where the hell does creative director go in here? I don't know what that is on an org chart, because we had the whole like summit side of the company, the sort of smarter artist nonfiction. We had Stories to Go. We had Story Shop. And that we had the studio, but then I was like, is the creative director just under the studio? Because there were things over in Stories to Go that required creative direction. And now I share an office with Robin now. I used to have my own office. And so it's great. It's fine. Like I can zone out, but she kicks her foot. So like I'm watching and I'm like, I see this in the corner, I just see it and I'm like, damn it. So I put the org chart there. So I'm actually looking at the org chart because it conceals the swinging foot, which is distracting me. And
It's like somebody that talks while you're watching TV.
exactly. I don't do good with sounds and distracted motion. So I'm looking at it now, and it's funny because when I originally drew this and then something changed, and I was like, and it wasn't that long ago, I was like, okay, well, I need to change that one thing. But this has slowly become almost entirely irrelevant. Like there is almost nothing on here that is accurate anymore. And it's just, I think it's gotten very simple. So start there maybe?
Yeah, that sounds about right. So I mean, there's a note here that it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, it's bigger than us. So when it was just the three of us making stories, that means we did still have other people in the team, even before there was a team. We still had to get edits done. We still needed to get covers. There was organization to happen there. But now we have a lot of different arms, and we're collaborating more than ever. So, for example, the outline that we have right now for a project that's starting next week is on version 12.
Fiction project.
It's a fiction project, yeah. And there's an outline I'm going to be passing back to Jen, before I clock out for the day today, and it will be version 12 of this outline. Now, the funny part about this is it'll probably get to version 14, I'm guessing, 15 maybe after Bonnie Story Jack hits it this weekend, and we'll start it next week. But what's funny about that is that it's the second version. We've already ripped this to shreds. There was a project I talked about in the last episode. Actually, this is that same one, and it had 13. It had version 13 before that. So just the outline has had almost 30 versions before we start writing. And then there's a lot of collaboration. There was our story meetings for this one, had several people in the company. I was there.
Is this the one? Are the initials of this project SS? The SS? No, what? Not that kind of SS. But are those the initials?
No, it's one word and it's a region.
Oh, okay. Oh, I know that one. Okay, yeah. Sorry, everybody, but I know.
And it's been an amazing project. I'm really, really excited about it. I'm really jazzed. But it has not been a straightforward process, and it's very different from the way that we used to the way we used to organize our work. And it's much closer to the language that we've used for a while, which is, we handle it like a writer's room, like television. We all break the story down. Well, that's actually what we're doing for this. Spencer and Joel, who aren't a part of this project at all, were on our story meetings early in the week where we were brainstorming. Dave would have been, but it was just too early in the morning.
You mean like 2 p.m.?
No, it was legit. It was 8 in the morning or 9 in the morning. Like, it was early for him. No, it was 9 in the morning, and he said fuck no when I asked him. He was like, oh, okay, I'm curious about that. And then I gave him the time.
Funny thing was, I was actually awake because I did not sleep at all that night, but I was way too tired to partake.
Oh, dude, no, you're so good when you're giddy.
I was miserable.
Yeah, but misery breeds some good story with you.
There would have been so many dead babies.
But yeah, we just hopped on, and that's the beauty of what we're building was, hey, we're going to have a writer's room at this time. Who can show up? Who wants to show up? And then we just brainstormed and then, started the next day. So we've got this wide team now, and it's about how the scope right now. I don't think we want to add anybody else to the team for a while. I think we really want to figure out what we have and make sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing.
We want to make that team official and organized. We don't want to add new members.
Right. Yes. And have everybody really functioning to their optimal level before we start adding anything else. Because right now we kind of close the doors to the smarter artist, and that meant closing the doors to some of the external things.
But isn't it so much easier to organize to know that you have the studio?
Yes, absolutely. Like oh my God, it's just, this is what we've wanted forever. It's just, it was amazing that it was in front of us and we weren't looking at it, and we had fog in front of us. We just weren't seeing clearly that, hey, this thing that we're trying to build, we should just focus on building it instead of trying to divide our time the way that we were. And this is a much more effective way to do it. But yeah, it means that we have to be really on top of things. It means that we have all these parallel projects. Like the calendar is crazy. The calendar is really, really nuts. So we've got, once we decided that we needed to go kind of internal and turn fiction, almost exclusively, it meant we had to bump up a lot of projects that were slated for 2019 and make them for 2018. So we have to get our calendar for 2018 all in order and then start plotting out 2019, because now our 2019 is totally disrupted because we yanked some of that stuff over to this year. Well, that's not easy to do. It was easy when it was always kind of complicated when it was 3 of us, and then we added Eros in there and started publishing romance and doing this and that. But now we've got all the different imprints, and we have, we're going to have, I think, something around 60 releases the second half of this year. So that's a lot of coordination, because you don't just have the different authors, you have the different outlines that need to be done. Not some of our authors write their own outlines, some of them don't. So you've got to line up outlines, you've got to line up story jackets, we've got to line up drafts, story meetings, because some authors like, periodic story meetings during the draft, and some just want to crank through it. So we need the things that are consistent and the things that are variable per author. Enough time for edits, enough time for, both kinds of edits. Like if there's thorough edits that need to be done versus just, copy edits. So there's all these little pieces, and they have to work in harmony. So with, more than a dozen writers and more than 20 projects in parallel open at any given time, it's a lot to manage. And we have to make sure that we are planning both for, the 3 months at a time, a year at a time, down to a month at a time, to a week at a time, to, okay, here's what's on our plate for the day.
Well, I think that the key thing here, because the topic of this one is planning for the long haul, and there's a tendency to overplan, and not with us, I'm just saying in general, to sort of like, okay, well, this would be the extreme end. We're planning something that's really big, and so let's start laying bricks for a foundation for a house that's going to be 100,000 square feet. Well, that's a damn big house, but you know what I mean? Like, and then it's just overwhelming, and then you can't build the team, and you can't function because there's too much, and you're starting small. And then there's starting too small and not planning for the long term and making mistakes. So I think that sort of the idea here is we want to build things that are appropriate for where we are, but that can scale to the long haul without something we did earlier in the interest of not going too big too fast to not conflict with it. So here's the metaphor I'm going to use. So I just moved, and as soon as we can justify it, our downstairs is just a little too small. I'm used to a little more space, and we have a garage that's it's part of the main part of the house. Like it doesn't feel like an attachment. It feels like there's a rectangle of the house, and the garage is 1/4 of it. And so I'd love to just convert that to like a living room, but it means that we need to build a garage, because in this neighborhood, you can never have resale value if you don't have a garage. You have to have one. So what I would love to do is to convert that, because that's actually not that big a deal, and then build a carport, because garages are really expensive. Like building a garage is like $40,000. But I don't care about a garage. I'm just going to need it whenever we eventually sell this house. I would be okay with a carport. And so I keep wondering, is there a way to build a carport that when we want to turn it into a garage later, the carportishness that we do now in the short term doesn't mean that we have to start over, if that makes any sense.
Do you think it makes sense? I'm just wondering about carportishness.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is,
have you been the first person in the world to use that word?
I probably am, but I think that there are things that you could do. Like you could do it if you said, okay, well, I only have one car. Here's the way that it wouldn't work. If I said, well, I only have one car, I only need a little one car carport, and that'll be fine. And then when I move, then I'll build a garage because it needs a garage for resale. So I could build a little 1-car carport, and that involves sinking posts and all this stuff. And then when I go to build a garage, I'm like, well, fuck, this doesn't help me at all. I have to, dig out the concrete posts, get rid of this carport entirely, raise it down to the ground, and then start over. As opposed to putting the posts where the garage's 4 corners would need to be from the beginning, and build, walls that won't. It has a brick facade, so you could add brick or something like that. So I think that the metaphor here sort of is, how do we build something that's that isn't overwhelming now? So it's not the $40,000 let's build a garage right now. Let's do it on a quote budget, meaning in terms of time and bandwidth and staff and stuff. We build the smaller version now, but we build it in such a way that when we want to grow it out to more writers, more projects, that one of those decisions we made early on doesn't hamstring us. Is this making any sense? I think that's sort of the balance we're trying to find.
Yeah, it's really trying hard to think. We're developing different systems too, because yes, every author is different. And I think the mistake that we could make is trying to over systematize or over plan or over plot and think that there's a perfect template or solution for everything.
Right. Well, that would be building the whole damn garage, even though you can't afford it right now.
Right. So what do we do? How do we, because, okay. So for example, and I keep coming back to this mystery project, whatever, I'm sorry. But one of the things that we really, this is an anchor project, and we'd really like to launch it for summer, which means we need to start writing right away. And because of that, we've had rapid iterations. So remember how I just said, I'll be dropping off version 12 this evening. Well, the 13 versions we had before that took a couple of months. The one that we're doing now is 2 days old. We've done this like really rapid iteration in this particular draft, and it's kind of amazing how fast it's come together. Just because we had to, and it's not like we're piggybacking off the old project. It is literally every character is new, every scenario is new. We kept nothing from the original, 0, and so that's a unique system that we're building just for this project. But now, okay, that may not fit every single project that we do, but we know that this rapid iteration version exists. And I'll explain it to you guys later. I think you'll actually really like it. And I'll explain it to anyone listening, maybe a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, once we've seen the fruits of it. But it's really interesting. And that's the whole point. Like, we have all these different ways of kind of developing our stories right now. And we can't be allegiant to any one way of doing it, because then we get locked in and it's frustrating because we can't evolve very fast. So what we want to do, planning for the long haul in this context, means really paying attention to the things that work so that we can do more of them, paying attention to the things that slow us down so that we can do less of those, and really doing our very best to focus and communicate internally so that author A is learning from authors B, C, D, and E, and vice versa. That we're doing that black box thinking, not just articulating our mistakes with each other, but sharing our victories. That happened with Ben this morning. Another one of our writers is he's writing a series that Johnny and I are developing for Realm and Sands, and it's kind of an anthology thing. So he's just writing a one-off, and I had a story meeting with him this morning on it, and I explained this kind of rapid iteration process that we were going through, and he's like, "Oh, hell yeah, that sounds awesome!" So we're able to try that, and it was only a few hours old. I mean, been doing this for the last couple of days, but because we're planning for the long haul, and we say, okay, that flow works here, let's put this over here. You don't want, what we're trying to do is eliminate the risk from the things that we're doing. I think that before we were much more okay. Part of planning for the long haul in our old context was that risk was okay because we could outrun it. We could have plenty of time. Right now, we've already paid all of our dues, and we really want our authors to monetize. So what planning for the long haul right now means making our authors as profitable as they can be short term.
Right. There's a need to balance short term and long term. But here's the thing about planning for the long haul is that it is it's easier to plan in the short term. Like it's easier to make the quick grab of cash or resources or prestige or whatever it is that you're going for. And people know that. And so when you have a team and you plan for the long haul, there's a tendency for, I mean, I'm generalizing here, but it's like people who get it go like it, they respect it, right? Like the right people are going to respect the idea of planning for the long haul, and it gives them a real clear vision of what the mission is. And that's one of the things that I don't think I've mentioned before when I was talking about foundations for Sterling and Stone, is that we are a mission-driven company. When we say we change the world with story, I know that that's a little Pollyanna sort of like the phrasing is, but we believe it. We have designs in education. Like we do want to change the world with story, as ridiculous as that sounds sometimes. And people know it. And if I could pat Sterling and Stone on the back a little bit here, I think that that's something that we've done a good job of making sure that people understand. And so we have a team that tends to be very on board. That's not something that happens automatically. Like if you don't have a company with a clear mission that everybody kind of understands and believes that you believe, then you can hire mercenary employees to do TPS reports. Like that's not hard. But having employees who are all in, having companies who really believe and they're just like, you know what, I know I've been assigned this, but this is what they really meant. This is the real purpose. I want to be on board this train. There's a lot of that sort of thinking, like our team wants to be on board with us, and it makes a huge difference in the long haul.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you look at, again, this project that I'm just going to name this project. I don't know.
Seattle.
Help me out. Okay, so this project is called Seattle.
It's not
so
really.
It's not really. The Seattle project is, like I said, we already had a call with other storytellers on it. Now their names are nowhere on this project, nowhere near this project. They have nothing to do with this project, but they want to show up for the sheer love of the storytelling and the being involved. Like that's what a team is. That's what a family is, and that feels really good. And when I'm done with this draft, I'll pass it back to Jen. She'll pass it back to me. And I can't imagine that Spencer and Joel won't want to take a look at it because that's fun. Like it's fun to go over a draft. Now, not every storyteller is the same. Dave, he'll jump on a call anytime. And if I describe a scenario to him, he's going to give me some great story stuff. But the opposite is like if I were to give him this draft, that wouldn't be a good thing because it would distract him from the draft that he's writing right now, which is our last closed box. And that's much, much bigger priority. So it's also being responsible to how your team works and how they operate within each other.
That's why I wasn't on that call, by the way. That's my writing time.
Yeah, exactly. So I would have loved to have Johnny be on this call. And not only that, Johnny would have loved to have been on this call because it's a project that really interests him.
Yeah, I really kind of want to write it, but I'm so not the right writer.
Yeah, I like there's a lot to love about it. And it did end up with the right writer, I think. It just took a long route to get there.
The obvious writer when you really boil it down.
it's very true. And that matters too. But for whatever reason, it took a while to finally stumble into its place. But there's different ways to think about long term. So if I'm just thinking about this project, the best thing to do would have been to have Johnny and Dave both on this call, because they would have been completely, they both would have added a lot of value in different ways. There's a lot of specific articulation Johnny would have brought to this project, and there's a lot of story details that I think Dave would have brought to this project. But I don't want to take Dave away from Whitespace. That's absolutely a mistake. And I don't want to take Johnny away from this. I mean, he's got a very rigid schedule and it's tight. And so the long-term health of Sterling and Stone and everybody's own rhythms makes a lot more sense. But it's a matter of who is available and eager and wanting to do this at the time. Then it's win-win, because Spencer and Joel are like, hell yeah, like I want to talk story for an hour. And so that's something that's, I don't know, you can't really ignore that. You have to listen to it. And there have been times in the past where I want Dave's answers so much that I'm going to give him this draft anyway. And he'll make time for it because he wants to do the right thing and he wants to participate, but that's not doing the right thing. So growing up and planning for the long haul is knowing that nothing is more important than getting CI where it needs to be, and that I can't pull Dave off of his focus to make that happen.
Yeah, I think the last thing I'd like to talk about in terms of planning and structure is sort of a fundamental shift in the way that we think about the company recently. I was actually just, while Sean was talking, I was taking a picture of our current org chart because I was going to send it to Dave. I think will not give a shit at all, but Sean, I think, will be amused by it because
my eyes will glaze over.
It's arranged in discrete chunks. Like looking over, there's Smarter Artist and Stories to Go, and like under operations. These are the things. Like operations are what the company does, and I didn't mean to put that in air quotes. We actually did them. And only one of them is the Story Studio, but they were like departments of the company: Story Shop, Stories to Go, Smarter Artist, and that was the way that we arranged things. Was in kind of departments. And what's happened to us twice recently, and enough that it's now set a new standard, is thinking in what's the best way? Strategic partnerships or modules that are kind of outside the company, allowing something external to the company to act as if it were a department of the company or a wing of the company. So the first, we're going to actually tell the story of two of these in the very next episode, and so I don't want to go too deep. But Story Shop is maybe a really good example, just to give you guys to whet
maybe
your appetites.
The best, because I think I would argue it's the best because once we made that deal or knew we were about to make that deal, I think it fundamentally shifted the way we could approach other deals in the company. It kind of threw the windows open, let the light in. We understood.
Well, that, and there was a TV option deal that happened at the same time. And those two things together, it was like a perfect storm. It was like, okay, well, now the standard's been set. Like, this is really obvious, the leverage, because when you do things this way, and again, we'll talk about it in the next episode, it's highly, highly leveraged, which means that the things that we're doing used to be a lot. Like, we had to administer all these things. Like, when it's a department in your company, you have several employees, maybe many employees. Between Stories to Go and Smarter Artists, there were a lot of people who are filling all these little teeny roles in here, a lot of moving pieces, a lot of systems, not to mention paying those people and doing all the boring paperwork sorts of things and contracts. Like, you have to manage that as a company. It's a company within a company. It's very Inception. When, however, it is a strategic partnership, all you need to do is the piece that you've agreed to do. So in the case of Story Shop, as I mentioned, we originally hired, well, we didn't originally hire for this, but Jen very quickly became sort of Story Shop's head, which position that she didn't want. Her and Seth at the very beginning. And so Story Shop was this whole thing. And then we hired Sue, who works with us originally for that Story Shop position. And Adam was working in that capacity. And it was this whole little unit and then a team of developers. And so and we're so not the kind of people who should be managing developers. Even if they did all the stuff, we didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know how to tell them. If we said, can you do this? And they said no, and we still suspected maybe they could in a different way, we didn't have the language to explain it. And so Story Shop, I'll just be a little spoiler here. As far as a financial thing, it was a huge loss. Like, we lost a lot of money on Story Shop. And
yay.
it was really, really hard. Like, it was a drain. Like, it was an organizational drain. It was a mental drain. Like, everything about it, other than the fact that we got Story Shop created and people like it, was a big pain in the ass. And what we're doing now, and we're limited on what we can tell you about this, but we'll describe the situation a lot more in the coming episode. We're basically entering into a partnership. It's like a little merger where another company is basically acquiring Story Shop as an asset, and we're a large percentage partner of that company, but our role is like advising, platform. It's the things that we do best, building authority and masterminding, like, sort of what marketing campaigns might be looking like. But as far as the business of Story Shop, that's their business. That's not Sterling & Stone. We have an interest in another company, and they're doing all that. Like, they have all the employees. They're putting all the stuff together. They're buying the ads. We have a financial stake, and it ultimately filters down, but it's not like something that's on our plate. And so between that and this TV option deal, the TV option deal basically said, you know that thing that you already created? Can we give you a large chunk of money and you don't have to do anything? And it was like, oh, yeah, that works. That works for me. So, and maybe we'll have you advise. So between those two things, it was like leverage plus sort of module thinking set a new standard wherein we weren't willing to settle for that with anything else within the company. Did I explain that so well that nobody even has anything to say?
Well, I don't have anything. Yeah. I don't have anything to add. I mean, I will add, this isn't really relevant to what you're saying. It's just slightly related. I mean, when we're talking about planning for the long haul and all of these things, all of these deals that we made, there's a separate angle to this where we did plan for the long haul, because all of these we had an opportunity to maybe take a payment, something better that was right now. This would make our situation right now better. But instead, we decided to play a long game, really plan for the kind of company that we want to build, the kinds of relationships we want to have, the kind of, architecture we want our company to have. And then how does that go in with the expectations that we're setting on the deals? And so you could make more money up front, or you can believe in yourself and the relationship and where it will take you. And there's been 3 deals that have landed on our laps in the last quarter, and all 3 of them we've approached very much with long-term thinking and long-term planning, and knowing that, okay, well, this isn't going to butter our bread right now, but we're going to have many more loaves in the future.
Okay. Well, on the loaf note, I guess we'll tie it up. But those are sorts of the ways that we're thinking, and we're going to talk about 2 of those modules, sort of partnership thinking. I know that this is a little bit crude because it really oversimplifies the relationship, but honestly, this is part of it. Is I said this in front of our accountant, and he predictably really liked it. I said,
I love this actually.
Right. I said, and this isn't literally true for any of these yet, but that's the idea long term. I said, we want situations that will send us checks, not bills. So, the idea is let's build something where we're putting in time and brain power and intellectual property and that sort of thing, but it's not something we have to support. We don't have overhead. We don't have payroll. There's not not even a literal bill, but like, you need to handle this. Like, kind of no. The idea is the partnership is set so that we contribute what we're best at. And then the idea is that it will eventually be an income stream that will come to us. And that's sort of where our heads are. So we're going to talk about 2 of those new relationships in the next episode. One is Story Shop, and the other is a brand new thing called Twisted Stone, which is super cool. And I think you guys are going to like hearing about it. So that's the next episode.
Ooh, you dropped the name and everything. Adios.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Story Studio Podcast. Are you wondering what the ever-growing demand for superb storytelling skills means for your future? Check out our latest interview as Johnny and Sean dive deep into that question in Storytelling is the Future, how to build on your self-publishing success. Download the interview from the info box or show notes in YouTube, or head over to sterlingandstone.net/future.